Mhm.
Hello, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Mary Olson-Menzel, and we're going to be talking about her book. We're going to be talking about how, as an individual, we can stand out and we can be different. Anyway, Mary's going to tell us about that. Mary, where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on maryolsonmenzel.com, which is, as you can see how it's spelled. Make sure that there's the OLSON. And you can also find me on mvpexec.com.
Excellent. So you've written a book, haven't you, called What Lights You Up?
I have. Yes, it's coming out next week.
So tell us the inspiration behind it.
Yes. So 12 years ago, I developed a 10-step methodology to help people pivot into jobs that they loved and careers that had meaning. And that 10-step program was, we engaged hundreds and hundreds of executives in it. And we started getting calls. Can you help my wife? Can you help my husband? Can you help my son, my daughter? And we were unable to clone ourselves. So I thought it would be a great idea to write the book.
Excellent. So when you talk about your book's titled "What Lights You Up," what do you mean? What do you mean by that? So how does somebody identify what their light is?
Yes, such a good question, right? It's what gets your head off the pillow in the morning. What is it that is that inner, exuberance that gets you excited to go to work every day? And what is it that, that light is kind of also could be your charisma or, the it quality that people call it, but it's all of that wrapped into one, your passion, your purpose, and your light.
So I'm going to say, is that because a lot of people talk about their purpose?
Yes.
Is this about having a purpose, or is that more than that?
Well, it helps lead you to your purpose, right? If you're following and tapping into what lights you up, it's a lot easier to live in your actual purpose than it would be if you're just kind of, living in the shoulds and going to work every day and, with blinders on. So it's really about bringing your inner power, your inner strength, and your inner light to every day.
Can you give us some examples?
Yes. So I have, there's an example in the book, which is such a great example. There was a guy who I was the head of recruitment for a major media company in Chicago. And we were interviewing for a head of sales for our flagship property. And we had hundreds of great candidates, hundreds of very qualified candidates, great pedigrees. And then there was this guy who walked in and literally the energy was palpable. Everybody stood up, sat up a little straighter in their chairs. And he brought this energy to the interview that was just undeniably this being lit up from inside. And, we interviewed him. We interviewed a lot of other very, very qualified candidates. And, the CEO of this flagship property ended up hiring him. And it was like, oof, he breathed life into, the rest of the department.
So there must be people watching this that would go, so how do you do that? Because I've been on a journey to find to understand what my purpose is, and I think I've done that. And there were certain trigger points or catalysts that allowed me to do that. But what is it for anybody that's watching that says, how can I walk into a room and light it up?
It takes really getting to know yourself again, right? Tim, when you think about kids, many of them have that natural exuberance and excitement about life every day. But as we grow into, adulthood, we are very much about to-do lists and what I should be doing and, what I need to be doing. And some of that inner joy, we kind of smush down. And what I'm telling people is to pay attention to what it is that brings you joy. I actually have an exercise in the book called the light log. And it is really, truly a simple exercise of writing down, just jotting down every day the things that you're noticing that are giving you joy. And then kind of, a week or a month or even longer, if you want to see the patterns of what is it that are the things that you love to do in your day-to-day life. And so that's the start.
So in the book, you also talk about writing your story. What do you mean by that?
So a lot of people can talk about the facts of their resume, right? And interviews can be tough, really tough for especially the introverts of the world. But what I've seen also is there's quite some very, very qualified, really amazing executives who just can't crush it in the interview. And some of that is because they are not really good at storytelling. And if you think about it, right, storytelling has been around since since the Stone Ages, and it resonates. There's a reason that people love stories. It helps them connect with who you are as a human being. And so rather than just rattling off your experience, I got my undergrad here and my graduate school here, and this was my first job. Tell the story about why you did what you did and how you connected the dots of each job in a compelling way so that somebody will smile and actually something might resonate in that conversation.
I interviewed somebody for this podcast, and she has a story which is one of it's to do with her mother. And her mother and what it does, I can't remember the story, but it just so pulls you in. And her purpose was to follow the what her mother had done and the example that her mother had set. And it was just so different from saying, I did this job and then I did this job and then I did this job.
Right. You remember it.
Yeah.
And it's true when there's the human element and the personal, the personalization that comes out in an interview. It's just so much more powerful. I had a guy from Wall Street who was interviewing with me, or we were getting him prepared for some interviews, and we were doing mock interviewing, and he had this amazing story that I happen to know. He actually had delivered his baby on the side of the road in a snowstorm.
Oh, wow.
On I-95 trying to get to Greenwich Hospital. And he said, well, I said, you should share that in an interview. And he said, oh my God, that's too personal. I can't share that. I said, you know what? That is memorable. And that is going to show that you can have grace under pressure. You're resilient and you're going to get the job done no matter what is happening around you.
Yeah. Great story. It's a great story. So in the book, you talk about how to get noticed. So how do you get noticed?
Well, part of getting noticed is leaning in to your network and really trying to engage with meaningful relationships and meaningful conversations, asking, people, how can I help you? Not just asking, how can you help me? And really being out there. I mean, you have to, it takes effort in this day and age of social media. You've got to be on LinkedIn and maybe be on Instagram or
Yep.
Snapchat is what my kids are all on, TikTok, but, putting yourself out there, leaning into, where you want to be and who you want to be with will really help for people to start sitting up and saying, oh, there's Tim. Oh my God, I've seen him before. This is so great. I'm happy to see him again.
And is that, when you say leaning in, is that being, in effect, being interesting? So I found this, or I there's a particular report I found, or something like that.
Definitely there's that, Tim, but it's also being curious, wanting to understand and learn from other people too. So it's a two-way street. It's the sharing, the knowledge sharing, but it's also the curiosity about wanting to learn more about, people in your network.
Because I think that what happens, isn't it, that we can be so wrapped up about ourselves that we become the center of the universe. And in fact, so on this podcast, it's Mary that's the center of the universe, because the whole idea is that you're coming on and you're demonstrating your expertise, and I'm just here to help prod along and do that. And I think that people quite often forget that in their network, it's understanding and talking to the people and saying, so what do you do? What gets you up in the morning, and actually being curious about them.
Yes.
Rather than saying it's all about me.
Exactly. And it is not all about me today. It's about our conversation, Tim, right? And that's it. The conversation is, the part that matters, right? It's the human connection. It's, the fact that you're smiling while we're talking, that we're having this connection, that's memorable. And that's what, we'll remember this. And hopefully whoever else is watching it will remember it too.
Well,
And
hopefully. And one of the things I wanted to pick up was that you talk in the book, and you've mentioned it earlier on, about joy. Now, I think that most people watching this would say, when we look out into the world today, it's not a very joyous place.
Yeah.
And there's lots of going on politically. There's lots of going on so what do you mean when you say choose joy?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, you're absolutely right. If we turn on the news, it's depressing, right? I mean, no matter what country we're turning on the news in, it's a bit depressing right now. And what I say to people is, what you can control is only your little spot of this universe. And you can choose joy on a daily basis. Joy can come in the form of a good cup of coffee. Joy can come in the form of, a walk with your dog. So remembering to notice and take in the beauty of these moments in our part of the world, because it would be very easy for us all to try to solve all the problems of the world. But, anything that we can do in our own control is probably the best place to start. And that then spreads joy on and on and on. That creates a ripple effect.
And is that about having a joy journal, or is that about talking to people about it, or is that doing random acts of kindness or something like that? I remember being at the train station near me, and someone came along and started smiling at everybody, and it started off, we thought, that's a bit weird, and then actually went, no, actually it's 7:30 in the morning and we've got to go into the office, and here's someone actually smiling. Actually, that's really nice.
Yeah. Well, it's all those little things, right? It is 100% random acts of kindness. It is 100% finding the joy in the moment so that you can spread that to other people. It's paying it forward. I mean, it's funny that you brought up the train. I'm from Chicago, and on Michigan Avenue in Chicago, everybody smiles at each other when they walk by. And then we moved to New York, and I was commuting into New York City, and nobody smoked, nobody smiled on the train. And I would start to play. Yeah, no, that was just like, and I would start to, play this little game with people where I would make eye contact. And if they actually made eye contact back, which was, 50% of the time, I would give them a smile. I was like, how, here it is. It's a beautiful day. Let's just find the beauty in it. But the light log helps, Tim, just to you call it a joy log, right? And just in the book, we call it a light log. It's tapping into what is it, and listening and paying attention to what is it that's bringing me joy in the simple things in life on a daily basis. And then it can kind of, balloon out to the bigger things.
Well, as you say, it can be a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So I can't, as I've got older, I can't drink a lot of coffee. I used to drink a lot. So actually having a cup of coffee is actually really special for me.
Yes.
I have to have it before midday. But actually, my partner and I will go into London, say on a Saturday, and she said, should we get a cup of coffee? And I'll sit there. And actually, it's a really special moment.
It's a ritual.
It is. It's lovely. I really enjoy it. It's just so special.
Yes. And, one of my colleagues, and I always talk about the difference between routine and ritual, right? Yeah. And, routine is, okay, this is what we have to do. This is on our to-do list today. And this is what we do every day. But the ritual of, embracing and enjoying that hot cup of coffee and just really savoring it, that is your ritual. And that brings you joy.
Yeah. And it's a simple thing. Mm-hmm. It's not a cheap thing anymore. It's now quite expensive. Right. And one of the things you talk in your book is about the 3 Ps, which are prospects, pivots, and passions.
Yes.
Talk to us about that.
Yes,
this is intriguing.
It is exciting, Tim, is what it is.
It's intriguing and exciting.
Yes, exactly. It is the moment in your career search, or in the 10-step program that we have, where you get to be very intentional about what you're doing, and you get to flip your job search inside out. And so a lot of people, when they're looking for a job, kind of wait for the opening to come to them, per se, right? They're looking at, Indeed and LinkedIn and talking to people in their network and things like that, but applying, to black holes of resume databases and everything else. And so this flips that inside out and says, okay, I'm going to be really intentional. I'm going to create a target list of companies that I want to go after. And I always put them into the buckets of these 3 Ps: your usual prospects, which I used an example the other day. My husband works in media. If he wanted to go to another media company, that would be a usual prospect for him, right? A pivot would be, he's the head of sales for a media company. A pivot would be going into sales in a tech company or, CPG company or something like that, right? But passion, I happen to know he's passionate, very, very passionate about sports, especially American football. And, I always say, act 2 for you, go do something in sales for the NFL.
Yeah.
Right? That would be where you're taking your existing skill sets and, putting it with your passions. So this list can be very, very big. It can be very robust at first, and you just put these companies into the 3 buckets and you dream big and you cast a wide net. And then you start to have conversations with people at those organizations or people who know people at those organizations.
So this isn't about necessarily going and talking to the same old companies. Because
Right.
you're likely, if you're going to go somewhere else, a competitor is going to be probably pretty the same thing.
Yes.
This is about using what you talked about in terms of your light, and saying, okay, so what else can I do? Like you said, going and working at an NFL organization because I'm really passionate about it.
Exactly. And that lights people up, right? I mean, I know that if he was in sales, for one of the NFL teams, that guy would be lit up every day.
Yeah, I can understand that. And in the last 3 minutes that we've got, you talk also in the book about rocking the interview. So what do you mean by that?
I really mean all of the things. It's kind of encapsulating everything we've talked about, Tim, right? Not only bringing, your excitement and your exuberance, your light into the conversation, but also making sure that you're prepared. A lot of people, and I'm not going to stereotype, but there are some kids coming out of college who have, the world at their fingertips and research, at their fingertips. And sometimes they come into an interview unprepared, right? So researching the company, making sure that you know everything about that company that's happening in the news, everything about the people you're interviewing with, making sure you understand, are there any commonalities with these people? Do we have any common connections? All of those things ahead of time. And then practicing your story, practicing how you're going to have this conversation. And I'm going to use my husband as an example again for this. He practices all his pitches on us as a family, right? So it's the same kind of thing, right? Practice in the mirror, practice with your dog, practice with your partner, whoever it is that's going to listen to you and help you hone the skill of interviewing so that when you walk in that door, you're like, I got this.
Because the last thing you want is for people to go, yeah, you're really good. What you want is actually feedback where someone says, I didn't really get that story. I quite often say to people, ask your partner to explain to you what you do. It's quite interesting when they do that and they say, well, actually, I'm not sure. Okay, so and actually, because that quite often helps get a story, doesn't it? In terms of, because what you want to do is actually get a story that someone understands that doesn't actually understand what you do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does, because you know what? You don't know you should have researched who you're going to be meeting with, but you don't know their unconscious biases. You don't know their frame of reference as you're walking into this interview. So the more that you can do to put color around what you do, your experience, and also, by the way, don't forget, you're interviewing them just as much. You're asking them questions and you're assessing, is this a place that I would like to work? Is this a person I'd like to work with? And at the end of the day, we want to work with people we like.
Absolutely. And you know, if we're getting up in the morning and it's our purpose, then it's going to be easy to do it, isn't it?
A lot easier. A lot easier. We'll still run into those people that might be a little bit harder to work with, but you know, Morag Barrett has a very good book, you know, to talk about how to embrace the LA mindset with all kinds of different people. But yes, I mean, it's just really, the more you can be diligent about your choices and where you want to go in your direction in life, the better off you're going to be.
Mary, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book, What Lights You Up. If I wanted to buy a copy, where could I get one from?
You can go to all the outlets, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Books A Million, you name it. But I do have a really exciting thing to tell you, Tim, before we go, is
Okay.
if you buy the book now, today,
Today?
today, the next couple of days, whatever, the next couple of weeks, up until pub date, which is October 8th, you can go right to the Mary Olson-Menzel site and you can download the entire workbook of all the workbook activities that I have in the book so that you can start working on it even before you get the book in your hands.
So if I go to maryolsonmenzel.com, I can download that.
Yeah, if you show proof of purchase of the book and you can download it. Yep.
Okay, fine. And otherwise I can go to I can buy it from Amazon.
Yes, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. I don't play favorites there.
Yes, other retail organizations are available.
Yes.
So Mary, where can we find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, please. If this is resonating with you, connect, buy a book, but also, you know, once again, we said maryolsonmenzel.com. You can see me on Instagram at Mary Olson-Menzel and on Facebook as well.
Excellent. Mary, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book. It's a fantastic framework in terms of getting people to, you know, there's a lot of people that have been out of work. I think it's a very timely book. And some of those people are going to have to pivot.
Yes.
You know, if you take IT, you know, the IT market has shrunk. And I think, you know, it's so timely and you've got such a great structure. Thank you so much